Welcome to the next episode of Small Business Chat. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. One of them being Nike just got sued. The big boy Nike just got sued. Or it's not just got sued, but finally the lawsuit has come to fruition for a company called Lontex. They sued Nike for trademark infringement. We'll dip into that. But today joins me as always, Matt. How's it going?
It's going well, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. We're getting pretty close to Halloween. Got all the Halloween vibes. Watch any good Halloween movies this month yet, Matt?
I have not. Matter of fact, I gotta be honest with you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna like blow up your thing here. It was like I cannot get into the Halloween spirit at all right now, and I don't know why. I'm just like this year's like the first year I haven't decorated my house. I haven't done anything. I'm being very bad. I did throw out some pumpkins around the office, right?
You did. So we're in the Halloween spirit in the office, so that's great. Um,
Yeah.
I um I have fully finally decorated my house this year, going all out on Halloween. I got some of my own decorations around, along with since we're actually having a Halloween party this weekend.
Ooh, yeah.
My wife's mother and father are giving us their Halloween decorations to use on our house since it's the party's going to be over at our place.
Wow, that's
So
cool.
we're
Yeah,
going to
I'm
be all
sorry.
decked out.
I will be out of town as you're aware, but thank you for the invite. I
Oh
appreciate
no,
it.
it's okay.
And of
Always
course,
next year and the next year after that.
there's
Uh,
always exactly. Look
but
forward to.
if you were Matt, though, if you were to come to the party and you it was standard to wear a Halloween costume, what costume would you wear?
I always go with my classic if I don't ever think it out. Like I think like some of the things like the funny ones that you have to think your way through it are always really great. But I usually just have I go as Indiana Jones because I literally have the outfit. And so when I throw down, I just go as Indiana Jones. I have to dye the beard now a little bit, put like little black stuff, stubble, because my stubble's all white, but usually that. What do you usually go as?
I love being a wolf. That's
Really?
yeah, that's my I used to be Emperor Palpatine, but you know how that went. Um,
Oh, that was awesome. Oh, I forgot about that. That was so awesome.
Yeah,
For the
just a
y-
little
y-
story for everyone that doesn't know the inside joke. But one of my first years at the Trademark company, I was pranked. I was told that we're all dressing up for Halloween in the office, and I went full out on a outfit that me and my wife woke up early for to have her do the makeup on my face, and I did Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, and nobody else participated, so it was just me.
yeah, we forgot to tell you that we weren't having the Halloween contest that year, but you look fantastic, dude. It was great. It was funny. But that when you do that, you just own it, and you did, and that was awesome. By the way, Halloween contest of the past. I used to always love the place when it was smaller and such, and we would do Halloween costumes because our old makeup of employees, and all that sort of stuff. For whatever reason, we got more into dressed up in costumes. I think it was probably because we were well, some say it, but we were more female dominated at the time. I think they just got into it a little bit more.
Mhm.
But I can always remember we had this one employee. I remember, I don't say negative, but just I always felt for her because I think she did a really great job. She came but like there was one year she should have won the contest. She came as Dwight Schrute from The Office.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And like, I mean, from the hair to I mean, she obviously she was a female, but she came as a dude. So, I mean, but I mean, from the white, short sleeve shirt with a tie, like she did her entire cubicle, like she did her stapler in Jello. I mean, because if you remember the episode from The Office where they did his stapler in Jello, I mean, it was amazing, and she still didn't win. Although there is one other person in our office who's obviously been here with for 10 years, who shall be renamed nameless. That every year she would come as like one year she came as a minion. I mean, she looked like a gosh dang minion. She came as Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. She had legal of her own. Every year, that's her big thing. Her big thing is Halloween, and she's still saying so. I think she probably would have beat the other person out, but I was just like, dude, her whole it was off it. It was perfect. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But anyways, that's our Halloween stuff. What else we got hanging going on here today as we transition in?
What's coming up in here in November? It's kind of like a side topic, but next month is the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight. Are you still taking Mike Tyson, Matt?
Oh, that's back on?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it's
we should so
starring.
like I don't know who's is like somebody from the office should like do that, and we should like stream it in the office or like at somebody's house because I would still want to do because we want to get a poker group going together as well because one of our guys and you know everyone's renamed nameless here, but you know one of our guys wants to start doing poker, but man, like do a poker night and do and watch that fight or just do that fight. I absolutely want to do
That would be cool. It's on November 15th. If you have, I don't know if we have Netflix on that TV or not, but we can, it's streaming on
yeah.
Netflix. We can get a Netflix account on there pretty
Well,
easily
you know
though.
that they're upgrading the office soon, so there are gonna be TVs like everywhere,
Oh,
right?
there you go.
Yeah, so we can put them all on, but and such. But that's all. Well, yeah, that's good. But yeah, I do want to watch it. So yeah, yes, I'm still gonna go with Mike Tyson.
Yeah, yeah, me
Until
too.
I see somebody beat him, and I understand, yes, Buster Douglas, and as he got older and stuff, but I think he's motivated. And I don't think that you said Jake Paul.
Yep.
Now I respect him. I mean, now I've actually seen videos on all this stuff, but I just I don't think he's been hit by someone that can hit as hard as Mike Tyson.
I mean, imagine, I know you haven't really, I don't necessarily follow the Paul brothers or anything either, but I just kind of grew up with them because they started out doing Vines when I was in high school.
And you're 12.
And imagine like being just, what Vines were, right? It's kind of like TikToks back in the day
Yeah,
before,
they're like the early TikTok, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
early TikTok. And imagine just doing Vines and being famous for that to becoming a professional boxer to fighting one of the greatest boxers who has ever lived for this.
Yeah.
This is and being featured on Netflix.
Yeah.
he Jake Paul also has a Netflix documentary, which is a part of the Untold series on Netflix, which is very good, by the way. If you check into that, all of their Untold. There's one about gosh, what is his name? Manti Te'o. Do you know who Manti Te'o is, Matt?
He's a linebacker for Notre Dame that
Yep.
claimed he had a girlfriend or something and didn't have a girlfriend, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was crazy. Not to spoil the documentary or
Uh,
anything, because it's a
Sorry
wonderful
about that, but I
one.
mean, it's I'm a college
Um,
football nut, so I pretty much can tell you anything about college football.
no, I
Uh,
mean it says it in the title, so I mean you can get that just by just reading the title of the documentary. But yeah, he was in Notre Dame whenever he met this person online, and they basically one thing led to another, and
that's
they
what it
never
was.
could like meet up like in person, and they just did FaceTime
It's like
for the
some
most
person in
part.
like Nigeria or some crap, and like it's like I don't know. It made him a famous household name though, and I think he got him drafted because he was okay in college. He played for Notre Dame, but I mean, I apologize. Is there a team in college football that is more perennially overrated than Notre Dame?
Yeah, yeah, I don't think so.
They let him come to
That's
the
pretty much
Final
the
Four
top.
like one year, and they just got smoked because they
Yeah.
just can't play with the SEC and the Big Ten anymore. That's why they don't want to join the Big Ten because they're a bunch of chicken shits.
Well, it was during
You know.
his one
Anyway,
because some people pointed the fingers at Manti Te'o when he was nominated for the Heisman Trophy,
yeah.
and he before the Heisman Trophy announcement he stated that his girlfriend passed away.
Oh,
Uh,
that's what it was. Yeah, his
yeah,
fake girlfriend passed away.
yeah, and everyone felt bad for him, including his grandma, all in the same week. Which was obviously the grandma was actually legitimate. And then all of a sudden, like months later, the girl calls him, and then that's where kind of it just spirals out of control from there. And then that's when he gets drafted to the Chargers, and then he never was the same. I mean, it really screwed up his professional career.
Well, if I
Um,
recall correctly, he was a gentleman of Samoan descent.
yes, he
And
was. Mhm.
you mentioned like that, like, and this is important to I think the story because he was a flash in the pan, and we all know there's great college players that are sort of like they're really good in college for like one season, and they get a bunch of buzz around them, like you just said, like the Heisman or whatnot. But then, when you really evaluate them at like the NFL Combine and stuff, if I recall correctly, he wasn't very big for an inside linebacker. He was like 6 foot or something like that. But it's interesting you mentioned that San Diego took him because they had Junior Seau, who was one of the greatest linebackers in NFL history and USC history. And I'm wondering if they're just thinking like the whole Samoan, like tough guy, because I mean, think about I mean, I know you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. The greatest strong safety, one of the two greatest strong safeties ever. Who am I
Mhm.
talking about?
Yep. Mhm.
Troy Polamalu, right? And so you got these Samoan guys and guys of Samoan descent that are just like they're like fireplay. They're freaking fast, great athletes and all that sort of stuff. And I think that probably played into his draft stock, but then he washed out relatively quickly. I think he started for like special teams for a little while, and then he was out. He's off the team. But I don't want to get into the whole NFL stuff too deep. But anyways, So there you have it. All right. Let's shift it over to our friends, and I say that loosely, at Nike.
Well,
What do
it's
you got
funny.
for
I
us?
actually use Nike as an example to explain to all my customers all the time
Yeah.
of what's the difference between filing, which is also good. I guess we can open it up with this. Is what's the difference when you're filing an application since the USPTO, they accept applications by if you're doing like a design and a word trademark, they have to be separate applications because when you're filing for the word, you're protecting the word and so that nobody can take the word name away from you. When you file for a logo, you're filing for the overall look, the way the font is, the way the shapes are made. Maybe you have some triangles, maybe they're upside down, maybe there's a rainbow in the background. It's how that all looks and how the colors are all mixed and matched and everything. I usually use Nike as an example because the first thing that I mean, everyone knows Nike, and one of the everyone knows what they're all known by. You know, they're always that swoosh logo, the white and black,
Whoosh.
and then the "Just Do It" slogan, and then that word, that bold that they use for Nike and everything. So I use it for examples all the time. But yes, so just to read off here, a Pennsylvania judge has doubled down its ruling and stating that Nike must pay the attorney fees to a company called Lontex Corp as a part of its loss in a trademark suit brought by the smaller sportswear company over its cool compression mark lineup. And obviously, as you know, that Nike has cool compression over, I think, more of sportswear than anything because I know there's cool compression shorts. I think Nike's known for that. So they're getting sued, and they actually won. They're forced to pay out $5 million to the company now. So
But it wasn't 5 million for actually like that. It was 5 million in attorney's fees. So
yeah,
they lost the trademark case, just to clarify. But in an exceptional case is what they call it. The court came in and actually said, okay, while defending this trademark case, you guys were so, and I'm paraphrasing now, horrible, Nike. We're going to award over $5 million in attorney's fees. So whatever they lost in the actual trademark infringements, let's put that on a shelf. This was just for their attorney's fees to actually bring this case. And by the way, just on an aside, if anyone's ever wondering how much it costs to enforce your trademark, well, here's your latest example. They battled for $5 million worth to basically win a case. And eventually the court said, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm going to actually award you your attorney's fees, which courts rarely do these days. But I have so many different soapboxes I can get on this stage right now. I'm trying to decide which one to jump on first. What do you think? Like fees, should courts award fees? Why did they award fees?
why do they award fees?
Spin the circle and we'll figure it out. Spin the dial. Why did they award fees? So, generally speaking, there's what we call in federal litigation and most state litigation. And by the way, just so everyone knows who I am and what what I do, I have over 1,000 trials under my belt. Back in an earlier day, I was a trial attorney, many, many years ago and all that sort of stuff. So I have a little bit of experience with this. And there is a statute that, allows effectively the award of attorney's fees to in essence, the winning party. Rarely is it invoked. And, in the trademark statute, evidently there's a specific, sub of this where it's allowed to, you're allowed to what they call fee shift in only exceptional cases. Usually it's, in the federal rules of civil procedure, it's not that high of a standard, but it's almost an unspoken rule that they almost never award attorney's fees unless there's some really abusive process on the part of one of the attorneys that are involved with the case. But in this case, it was a trademark case, so they turned to the trademark statute, the Lanham Act or whatnot, and it's basically in exceptional cases. And in this case, this court found that the Nike attorneys had, and I'm not quite sure all of the actual findings, but basically it had litigated the case in a manner that it was so poorly done. And when I mean say poorly done, they're probably excellent attorneys, but that they were so egregious, that they were so, not agreeable to the way things are supposed to go on in litigation, wouldn't admit things that they should have admitted, et cetera, that the court just said, you made them spend all this extra money. Like, I'll just tell you, back in the day, probably about 10 years ago, when we'd send out a lot of federal district court cases for litigation that was outside of what we could do as a company, we would send them to, like, for instance, our, local Los Angeles council or, whatnot. And, we would always routinely hear, okay, listen, it's going to cost. So you want your client wants to enforce their trademark against whatever company? Yes. How much? 300,000 start to finish. They'll probably get you through trial. Okay. Nowadays, I would assume it'd be like 4 or 500,000 with inflation and legal fees that have gone up. 5 million is an extraordinarily large number for legal fees for a trademark case. And I can only assume it was because at every turn, the Nike attorneys must have just been making things like pulling teeth when they didn't need to. Now, part of that may be because they end up losing the case, right? So maybe they knew they had to lose their case, so they were just trying to delay the inevitable. But the court eventually, and then, well, courts rarely award fees, and they were just hanging their hat on that. And this time, the court goes, "Well, let me take the hat off the hook there, and put it on the other person's head because they got $5 million for this." Strained analogy, I know. So how am I doing?
You're doing pretty good. You're doing pretty good. And how hard is it to win a case like this, man? I mean, if you're on the defense of Nike, like, is it pretty much impossible, or is there anything Nike could have done differently?
Well, and yeah, I haven't reviewed the case extraordinarily, but I think you told me that the remarks sounded like they were identical. What were the marks? It was cool something, right?
Full compression.
Cool compression. And so I think in this instance, I thought that this smaller company in Pennsylvania had a registered federal trademark for like cool compression, something for maybe like, I don't know, socks or something. And then Nike comes in and starts using it. And for all they know, maybe Nike's defense was they were using it in a descriptive, fashion or something like that. But from my understanding, what they probably did wrong with a multitude of things was like, there are things called, like, for instance, admissions. And so you're allowed to ask the other side, do you admit that, the trademarks are visually similar, and such. And, you don't, know the strength of your case, know the weakness of your case. I know there are a lot of defense lawyers and lawyers out there say, I will never admit anything. Well, I think that people need to read this case, because if you fail to admit something that's obvious to the court, you're just trying to narrow the issues for trial. So you don't have to call 17 witnesses and expert witnesses to say, cool compression. Yeah, it's the exact same mark as cool compression. You know, Admit it. And let's move on to, okay, so what's your defense? Your defense is, well, no one knows who their trademark is, or the goods and services aren't the same. That's fine. But admit what you can admit, move on, narrow the issues for trial. And what my understanding is that they just at every turn are just like, we'll never admit anything. We're never going to do, and we're going to make everything tough on you. We're not going to, and I think the court probably must have ordered. Oh, I can remember reading this one specifically. They had asked for, the plaintiff had asked for a list of, okay, we need a list of people that we can, talk to about your marketing campaigns or something like that. And the Nike lawyers refused to give it to him after like 2 or 3 motions to compel. It's a completely reasonable thing. You're trying to show overlap of marketing channels. And you can't just basically say, go pound sand, especially after a court orders you to do it. I mean, one of the things, that I learned growing up, and, had the benefit of being trained by 2 former U.S. assistant attorneys. I mean, the judge addresses you, your butt better not be in that chair. You're standing. You wear a red tie and a blue suit to trial. And anytime the judge says something, you are respectful, even if it's bad for your case. And if they give you an order, you comply with that order within that time. And that is a sacrosanct. You just don't, violate those. And if you're going to play with those, you're going to get a $5 million, attorney's award against you. So congratulations. And again, I'm assuming Nike was in on this. I'm assuming the attorneys were briefing Nike saying, this is what our issue is. But evidently they multiple times just sort of looked at orders from the court, and they're like, yeah, we're still not going to give them the name of the witnesses. Finally, they give them the name of the witnesses. But multiple, and you look at the plaintiff's attorneys, they had to spend all this money to basically, because they have to bill their client, they got to, pay their light bills. They got to spend all this money to basically go and file motion after motion after motion that's needless. The court has to rule on motion after motion after motion that is needless. Everyone wants hard-nosed litigation, but hard-nosed litigation that's in good faith. And I think the court just said, no, this is extraordinary circumstances. We're awarding you all your attorney's fees. Boom. Wow. So that, props out to this plaintiff's counsel that actually got this done. Props out to the court for actually reading the statute and applying it. And props out, and maybe this will be a lesson to, obstructive attorneys out there everywhere to listen. It may suck when your client is basically the person that is in the position of, we may lose this case, but that's when you advise your client, well, you may lose this case, pay him, settle it. why waste the court's time and all that sort of stuff. So, anyways, again,
Awesome.
I can drone on.
I will let's drone on a little bit further. I have a good question for you. So, my first input would be, do you think lawn techs could have gotten away, not gotten away would be the best way to put it, but do you think lawn techs could have asked for more money than what they've asked for? And then my second question would be to follow up that is, if they did, is there like a certain point where Nike they shouldn't need to pay that certain amount? Is there a way that they can agree to only pay a certain amount? Is there anything that's capping it off of how much lawn techs could have asked for? Is that a good question to ask?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So how this typically happens is usually there'll be a finding by the court. So the court, I think in this case, the court may have been so ticked off at Nike's attorneys, and don't quote me on this. I'm not 100%. This is just from the article that you sent me that we read. I think that they were so ticked off the Nike attorneys. I thought the court spontaneously awarded them fees. Traditionally, what will happen is at the end of a case, if you've won the case after a jury verdict and all that sort of stuff, you file a motion, the winning party will file a motion, and just throw in a little bit of thing like, and we would like our attorney's fees awarded, yada, yada, yada. And like 999 times out of 1,000, the court's like, yeah, you've already won money. It's enough. I don't have to award fees as well. But so what will happen? So in this case, either spontaneously or on motion of plaintiff's counsel, the court said, yes, I'm awarding fees, reasonable attorney's fees under the statute, because this is an exceptional case. Then what will end up happening is they have the actual party who is submitting the fee request actually send them effectively their billables, their billing statements in as part of a motion. So they say, okay, I would like you to brief this. How many attorney's fees did you actually incur? And then you're required to actually submit this down, but you do it really happily because you're like, oh, we're getting some money back, and our client's going to be thrilled because this ended up costing them nothing, and they made a lot of money on this. So you look like a hero to them. You of course have the ability to redact out if there's anything that is attorney-client privileged that you put in your billing statement. Usually that's not the case because most people don't, put in something so demonstrative or, descriptive such that it would be in their billing statement, like advise client to, take this position on this, point, 4 hours or whatever. But you do, if that is the case, you have the chance to redact out, and then the court can say, well, since I couldn't see that, I'm not going to award that. But, then they tabulate it up and they say, okay, well, here's your $5 million in fees. What I can tell you generally speaking is the longer a case goes on, the more fees you're going to incur. And fees traditionally in any type of litigation are going to be backloaded, especially when you go to trial. So what do I mean by that? You start off and litigation is fun, and then the first really, you file a lawsuit, it's really not that expensive, et cetera. But then you get to that first phase, which is called discovery. And then you start exchanging questions about each other's cases. And then when the fees really rocket up is when you start taking depositions of all the witnesses. And if you suddenly have like 60 witnesses or 40, I've been in a case where I literally defended over 100 witnesses depositions in 1 month. And like I literally just sat in a conference room for 1 month just fighting it out with, plaintiff's counsel. I was defense counsel. No, I was plaintiff's counsel at the time, excuse me. And they were defense counsel, and just, protecting all of, our clients and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, that's, if you can imagine, an attorney's, I was 60 hours a week, and, all this sort of stuff. And that's all just tremendous billables. So then you have this lower period in the case where you go into the motions and the pretrial motions and stuff. And this goes over a year or two, and then finally, the most expensive part of the case, which is trial, because if you have a trial team of 2 or 3, attorneys, and then, an army of paralegals that are supporting them, et cetera, depending on how big the law firm is and what their billable rate is. I mean, each one of those attorneys that's in trial, and if you have like a 3-week trial, those attorneys are working 60 to 70 hours a week. This is not a joke, each attorney. So they're billing, let's assume for a second that, the average trademark lawyer is billing between $500 and $1,000 an hour at that level. You can see, so 1 week of that one attorney would be $60,000 to $70,000 for that trial. Put in 3 attorneys, you're looking at $180,000 just right there for that 1 week. And that's not to say, you're getting ready in advance of that. So then all of these bills, to wrap up this question, go down to the trial court. And so you could have, like, again, going all the way back 2 or 3 years of litigation, you could have, like, 500,000 to 1 million, depending on how strenuous or difficult the other attorneys were in discovery. And trial could be several million, is what, if you have like a 3 week trial with an entire trial team, sitting out there trying this case, that all goes to the judge. And usually the judge at that juncture rubber stamps it and says, send him a check.
Gotcha.
Don't
Okay.
wait.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, and that's one thing I didn't think about as well, is it's not necessary that Lontex was asking for that. Was it the court that awarded them those fees? Not awarded, but also just told them that's what the attorney fees would be?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, so it's, again, it's the court that has to award it, and but they have to itemize, what the fees were, which is, by the way, so if you're plaintiff's counsel, it depends. Like, so if you're a personal injury counsel, you do everything on contingency. So a lot of times it's a lot harder because, like, so if you're doing like a business litigation case, you are generally billing your client along the way. If you're a personal injury lawyer, you're not billing your client along the way. You just do everything effectively. It's included, and you just take, 1/3 if you win the case or get a settlement or whatever the case is. So a lot of times it's a lot more difficult for like a contingency lawyer and such. But almost no trademark counsel at this level that are bringing these big cases are contingency. As in fact, I think it's unethical to have a contingency in a business litigation dispute almost throughout every bar association in the United States. So you can only have contingency fee agreements in certain types of cases, personal injury being one of them, and such. And so they have to itemize their bills and actually bill their client along the way. So this client, to win this case against Nike, they were in more than $5 million to win this case against Nike, which is a tremendous amount of money to pay. But they were vindicated and they won. Now, the next level, no one's talking about this, but I would be shocked if Nike did this, because again, I'm not sure if they could get any other additional damages after the court. I'm thinking my way with this, but if you're Nike, you appeal this and then try to negotiate it down, because you would ask, do they have to pay it all? I mean, half the time you appeal things. Like back in the day, I was doing asbestos litigation in the District of Columbia for a really great law firm that I used to work for. And if we would take maybe one to trial a year, and they would settle out every other month. And when I say I've been involved over 1,000 trials, part of that's because you're taking 10 to 15 guys cases to trial once a month for an entire year. You have a trial calendar. It's just like, okay, and some days you'd go to trial, some days you'd settle them out early. But so, one of the things that you would do is, once a year, we would basically be like, okay, which is the best group of guys that we have? We're taking these to trial, because we just didn't feel that the amount that they were offering for settlement was enough. But you still had to prove that you could actually go and pop them for a huge verdict. So you would go pop the bad guys for a huge verdict. And then, of course, they would, within 30 days, obviously, they would appeal it. And the appeal was just simply to basically get a negotiation point, because the only thing you're going to get on appeal is a little bit of interest. If they end up winning the appeal, or excuse me, they end up losing the appeal, oh, we did have to pay you for 18 months to 2 years. But what they would do is, listen, there's no way you could pop that verdict again. We'll pay you 75 cents on the dollar. What do you think? And we'll pay you right now. You don't have to wait for 2 years. And when you're dealing with asbestos litigation, a lot of times your clients didn't have 2 years left on the planet. And so you wanted to hopefully get them so their best interest was to actually resolve the case for 75 cents on the dollar. And these defendants knew it. But so maybe Nike will appeal this and try to basically say, listen, we'll give you $4 million for this or whatever. And once you settle things, so long as it's an agreed upon settlement at arm's length, the courts usually aren't going to disturb that. It's extraordinarily rare that a court will step in and say, no, we're not going to allow you to settle this. We need this to go through.
Awesome. And also at the same time, Lonix filed a motion before Bailson's decision asking for an inflation adjustment, which is, well,
So
with
they asked for more.
yes, yeah, they asked for more, which if granted would have brought the Nike that they would have had to owe up to about $6.3 million. Bailison particularly sided with Nike on that piece of the fees question, ordering the company to pay the originally awarded amount back to Lontex, not the inflation adjusted rate. However, the judge ordered that Nike will be required to pay market rate interest from remand until the time that the fee is paid by Nike as a part of the order from Bailson.
Yeah.
Lontex will have the chance to file by October 30th a supplemental motion. Maybe you can touch upon what that is, Matt, for attorney fees. It accrued preparing briefs to submit to the district court after the appeals court ordered a review of the Lanham Act, whatever that
Lanham
means.
Act. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the big Trademark Act. It's the Trademark Act of 1946. But yeah, so in short, what the court is saying is, listen, I'm not going to listen. I already awarded you attorney's fees. Don't get greedy. We're not going to do it on inflation because yeah, because my guess is this case may have been going on for 3 or 4 years. And so what they're saying is, yeah, but the inflation 3 or 4 years ago, we don't want to get too political here because we won't be able to post this, but the inflation was really, rough over the period where we were incurring this. So accordingly, we want this $5 million, fee adjusted up to 6 point some. And the court, in essence, probably said, "Yo, I've already given you $5 million. Don't. The words that you're supposed to come out of your mouth are thank you." As opposed to, upping it. But I'll give you a minor solid. Listen, if these people take this thing up to appeal, and if they, just what I had sort of said, one of the strategies is if they take this thing up to appeal, and such, you're awarded reasonable interest for it. But then you have to do a SUR motion, another motion to say, okay, court, this is what the interest would have been, the calculation. This is how we calculate that interest on that 5 million while they were just playing around with the Court of Appeals, which ultimately will rubber stamp this as well and send it back down. And so, $5 million on, a standard interest rate, that's not insignificant. So they'll probably end up having to pay another couple $100,000 on this. Just like, yeah, I don't want to say it because it's political, then we'll get in trouble. But it's they get interest while you're not paying off a judgment. So it's just like anything else. Like you get a judgment against you, it accrues interest. They always try to, scare you and such like every single day. Well, it's whatever. It's calculated annually, whatever it technically is every single day, but it's accruing interest. And the judge is saying, well, you can come back and say, whenever this ends up taking 2 years on appeal, that's a fine. We'll just give you 2 years of interest, but you just have to file a subsequent motion. By the way, to which gives Nike another, it's almost you could theoretically perpetually appeal this if you're Nike. And that is one of the things that the big companies sometimes will do. Because then you say, well, we're going to appeal the order on the interest. And then you do another 2 years. And the judge comes back and says, okay, we're going to, at some juncture, the Court of Appeals would basically be like, okay, enough. We're not even going to accept this. We're sending it right back. You're done. Pay. So usually these things get resolved out. It's usually a play by Nike just because their attorneys basically now have a bloody nose. And, again, if they weren't keeping their client, Nike, in the loop about, if Nike wasn't a part of the possibility that they were going to have to pay an extra 5 million. I've had cases against Nike before. And you've heard my views on at least their in-house counsel and all that sort of stuff. I don't think that any major company, even as rich as Nike is ever thrilled about having to pay an extra 5 million. I'm assuming that I can't imagine being in a meeting if I'm with, general counsel of Nike and I'm outside because they probably had outside trial counsel. I don't know who the outside trial counsel is. And by the way, they're probably fantastic lawyers. But whatever decisions they decided, they said, we're going to make this as tough as possible. And people make that decision all the time. I can't talk about it, but I've tried cases against the handgun industry and handgun manufacturers. I can tell you, you want to talk about some people that make stuff difficult. Holy crap, and such. But that being said, I can't imagine being outside counsel briefing general counsel for Nike, which I'm sure they would occasionally have those briefing. Hey, you're going through your cases, and where do we have possible liability? Where do we not have possible liability? And say, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And by the way, this is the litigation tactics we want to do. We're going to make this tough on them and all this sort of stuff. I can't imagine it was ever uttered to general counsel for Nike. Oh yeah, and by the way, we're pushing the line so hard that this could end up costing Nike and Nike shareholders an extra $5 or $7 million, because of the litigation tactics we're using. On the flip side, general counsel may have said to them, listen, we're making a tremendous amount of money on this, whatever this trademark is that they were found to be infringing on, push this as far as possible, elongate this as long as possible. I don't care. I'll pay the whatever. So, you never know how the internal conversations work between outside counsel and the general counsel for Nike and or whatever. I would generally be surprised that I would guess that this came as a surprise to them that the fees were awarded, because you would never intentionally push something to the point that you damaged your client to the sum of another 5 million. Because in my opinion, what ends up happening there is unless it was Nike's general counsel that said, do it this way, and this is the way I want you to litigate this, I'd be shocked if that lawyer and that law firm had the Nike account going forward because of, costing an extra 5 million. Or does Nike look back at them and go, well, you pay the 5 million, we paid you your, they probably, if it costs 5 million for plaintiff's counsel, Nike probably has more expensive lawyers than that. Probably cost them 10 million. But, Nike may turn back to that law firm and basically like, well, you're paying it. That's the way you chose to actually, litigate this case. We hired you to defend the case. We didn't hire you to get us, an additional penalty of 5 million after you lose the case. So it's interesting. I feel for all sides, like, and I understand all sides. And again, that's the way that a lot of times big companies will defend things. Scorched earth is what we call it. But then every once in a while you get scorched back, and clearly this firm did. They probably gave the best defense they could for Nike in a very undefensible case, but it ends up costing them in the end. So such is life. Again, they're probably fantastically skilled trial lawyers, but it is what it is.
Scorched Earth sounds like a Harry Potter book.
Have you never heard that term?
No,
Oh
no.
yeah, man. That is in the litigation industry, man. It is, that's just, when you come up against, there are certain law firms that are known for it. Like, having done all this and seen, been up, I've dealt with, many, many mega law firms up in New York City. Those are high price lawyers and all this sort of stuff. You know, I can tell you which ones, and I won't name names per se, but there are some that I'm just like, I remain like in awe of how good their lawyers are. Because I'm like, it was you're a lawyer and you have, you start learning things and you can start putting yourself like where it is and all that sort of stuff. And again, and I'll just simply say the handgun lawyers that we dealt with, not only the guy I'm specifically thinking of, not only was he scorched earth, but he was a fantastic lawyer. And on the side, he was actually a great guy. It's just the way that they choose to defend cases back in the day. And one of the cases I was involved with led to all the legislation actually whereby you can't sue, handgun manufacturers anymore. Because we did, and I can't go into the results of the case or anything like that. But he was a fantastic lawyer. These lawyers that I can't remember the name of the law firm. It's one of the big ones. No, I can. Skadnarps. And I always say positive, whatever. I got the opportunity to try a case once against Skadnarps, and I kept thinking to myself, what are they doing? They're spending all this money. They represented Citibank at the time, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, God, this guy just, what is this guy doing? They got 27 lawyers in this room, and obviously I'm exaggerating and all this sort of stuff. We went up to, it's like one of the nicest experience of trial work I've ever done. We went up and did all the trial depositions in their New York City, or probably one of their New York City offices. They had 2 floors of conference rooms just to do depositions. That's how many lawyers they had like the whole building of lawyers. At lunchtime, they had a floor that was just for food for all their lawyers. I'm like, I don't want to leave this place. I'm representing somebody else, but I'm like, this is one of the greatest days of my life. This is fantastic. Like serving you with white gloves and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, the whole time I'm like, man, I'm kicking, Citibank's butt here today. I mean, this is great and all that sort of stuff. These guys know none. They smoked me at trial. He smoked me. And I laugh only because I really do think in the end of the day, I think that we should have won, but I have ultimate respect for the attorneys that tried that case and all that sort of stuff because you just, scoreboard, they won. I still think my client should have won, but my client did not win, and I was his attorney, so it is what it is.
Can't win them
But
all.
yeah, you can't win them all, and and I felt bad and stuff. By the way, I do know my client's still out there using the trademark. But years later, but they did successfully stop him from registering it with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. But fantastic attorneys out there. But again, I can't imagine what their bill would have been for just that case. I bet those guys, they probably had like a $5 or $10 million bill to actually oppose his trademark. It's fascinating. But okay. Yeah, I just rein me in here,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's all we got for today. Thank you for everyone that's listening. As always, this episode is sponsored by the Trademark Company. If you need any help with filing for a new name, a new trademark, LLC, also we help with as well. Formation, copyrights, patents, you name it, we've got it. And also, we help with website takedowns and social media takedowns as well. If you feel somebody's infringing upon your brand, we can help with that. So just I'll leave the link in the description as always. But again, thank you for listening. We appreciate you all, Matt and I both, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.
Hey.